Hello everyone, Emoji Movie Channel here, and I'm here to finally catch up on this year's animation slate. Yeah, you may have noticed that I've kind of drifted away from doing reviews for new movies as they come out during the past few months, but I don't want to leave you guys in the dark, and I'll admit my Letterboxd reviews aren't the most detailed things ever. So today I'll be looking at two animated films we got recently in 2022, The Bad Guys and the new Bob's Burgers movie. Also, don't you worry, I'll be making a 10-hour video sometime about why Marmaduke is a cinematic masterpiece. Well, let's quit stalling and dive into The Bad Guys first. For those unaware, The Bad Guys is the latest DreamWorks animation film about a group of criminals named, you guessed it, The Bad Guys. After the Bad Guys get into a bit of trouble with Lois from Family Guy, they have to learn to be good with the help of a guinea pig. And yeah, that's the plot. Despite it looking a little simple and generic, this was a movie I was actually very interested in. Obviously, the animation in the trailers looked really great, but I always love a good heist/crime movie, and seeing DreamWorks do their own take on that was something I thought could work out well. I mean, I guess you can also consider Over the Hedge a heist movie, but this movie would never be as good as that, sorry. And after seeing it, I gotta say, The Bad Guys pulled off being this type of movie very well. It definitely knows what movie it wants to be. The first 10 minutes were probably my favorite part of the film, as we start off with this really amazing Pulp Fiction-esque dialogue scene between Snake and Wolf. It is hilarious, and it establishes the chemistry these two have in a really fun way. The chase scene that follows is amazing, as it contains such a high level of humor, wit, and excitement, while also introducing the main characters. I can definitely tell the people making this movie were having a ton of fun with it. While they may have had a generic plot on their hands, they did the most they could to keep the movie engaging. But yeah, there's not really a way around that point because it still does feel a little generic at times, and we have seen this type of stuff before. Genericism isn't always a bad thing, but for this movie, I felt it was kind of a double-edged sword. Sometimes it falls into the category of charmingly simplistic, to the point where I still had a fun time watching it. I really enjoyed all the shenanigans the bad guys got into as they were trying to learn to be good. I love this movie's message about how you should always share your push pops, and those scenes are definitely funny. But there are other times when the movie just feels like a generic kids film, and there are some plot points where it feels like the writers were forced to put these in by the executives, and in hindsight, that definitely makes sense. These moments particularly happen in the second half when the creative charm this movie had during the beginning started to fade away a little. Yep, you know where this is going. There was a poopy trope.
There is no us.
It wasn't the worst thing ever, but it was kinda unnecessary. For context, Wolf's friends all get mad at him because he says,
"Maybe I don't want to be the bad guy anymore."
and then they have the big emotional breakup scene on the beach. Wah, 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 wah. Then they all go home and Spider, Shark, and Piranha are like, oh, being good is actually good, but then Snake's like, I'ma head out. If 3 out of 4 of them were just gonna change their minds 5 seconds later, then why didn't they just all have a breakup with Snake? Wait a minute, what if the reason Snake was angry wasn't because of the bad versus good thing, but it was because he had a thing for Wolf, and he was mad that Wolf's hetero instincts had kicked in? I'm joking, obviously, but that'd probably be more interesting than what this movie did. So yeah, the movie can get generic like that at times, but I definitely still enjoyed it. What carries the movie the most is definitely the crime sequences and the characters. Like I said, I love a good heist movie, and the crimes these 5 animals get into are super entertaining. They're not very complex, and they basically boil down to just stealing money or stealing trophies, but what really makes them work is the energy and pace they have. They made sure not to drag them out too long, so the heist plans these animals come up with could still be engaging to watch. It didn't really matter to me how simple they were because the pace was kept just fast enough to the point where I can still be on the edge of my seat. And this is also due to the great characters this movie has. I already said that Wolf and Snake have a great dynamic, but the rest of the team is fun too. But something that's weird to me is how most of them don't have names. The tarantula is named Webbs, and that's cool, but the others are named Mr. Shark, Mr. Piranha, Mr. Snake, and Mr. Wolf. I guess they couldn't think of any animal puns. But anyways, these characters work really well together. They all have unique personalities, and the banter between them is funny, while also still being down to earth considering what type of characters they are. They feel like an actual family of criminals, and in a way that's actually kind of wholesome. If there was one character I did not care for, it'd be the actual villain of the movie. Spoilers, but yeah, there's a twist villain, and it's not a very good one. I can't really judge if it's predictable or not, considering I had the villain reveal spoiled for me before I saw the movie, but yeah, he's just not a very interesting character. His plan doesn't really make all that much sense to me. From what I can gather, this guinea pig is famous, and he wins Nobel Prizes and stuff like that, and everyone loves him, but he wants this big space rock that fell from the sky because he wants to control a bunch of guinea pigs, and he wants to control them into getting money for him from a charity he set up. But this guinea pig is already rich and he likely gets money from the Nobel Prizes he wins, so making him just want money is just a lazy motivation. And the reason he gets caught up with the bad guys is because he wants to steal the space rock and he wants to make it seem like the bad guys stole the space rock when actually he did. But everyone trusts the guinea pig, so why can't he just ask to borrow the space rock? And this is stupid. The movie loses me a bit with this villain, but at least it makes for a super creative climax and a really smart ending. And on a final note, we gotta talk about the animation, cause boy, wow. This movie's visuals look merely good in still frames, but when you see it in motion, it's just incredible. The character animation is slick, the stylized 2D elements are well incorporated, and it's just all around a visual delight. The animal character designs are also really creative and fun. You can tell a ton of passion went into every corner of this movie's visuals. So overall, I really liked The Bad Guys, even though I wouldn't quite say that I loved it. It can be generic and kiddie at times, which does make the emotional moments fall a little flat. But I wouldn't say it affected it too much because the movie still had some great characters, fun action, and some really cool animation. It feels really good to do a positive review on a DreamWorks movie for a change. Ever since I started reviewing movies, I hadn't really had the nicest things to say about their stuff. I definitely think the Universal buyout has tainted the studio and the quality of their movies quite a bit. So I'm not holding my breath for the next Shrek or How to Train Your Dragon anytime soon, but this was definitely a step in the right direction for them. I'm gonna give The Bad Guys an 8 out of 10. Alrighty, with movie number 1 out of the way, let's move on to movie number 2, the Bob's Burgers movie. I suppose something to address before we get into the real meat of this film is the TV series it's based on. And I gotta say, I absolutely love that show. I haven't seen every single episode since I don't have unlimited time on my hands, but I have seen a lot, and it is a really funny and charming show. When I first heard that they were getting a movie, I was actually really optimistic about it. You can argue that Bob's Burgers wouldn't lend itself well to a movie since it's just a simple comedy series, as opposed to something like The Simpsons, which can get really crazy at times. But to be honest, I didn't really care about that since I love these characters so much, and if they can think of a decent enough plot and great jokes to go with it, then I most certainly have a good time watching it. And after 2 years of delays, I'm happy to say that I did enjoy it. The Bob's Burgers movie is very good. It's great. It's amazing. I love it. On a technical level, yeah, it's not the greatest movie of all time or anything, but I can't remember the last time I smiled this much while watching a movie. But at the same time, this movie contains all the charm and wit from the show, so I'm not that surprised that I loved it. Firstly, this movie is absolutely hilarious. This is undoubtedly the most I've ever laughed in a movie theater and the funniest movie I've seen in recent years. Sorry, James Gunn. I laughed over a dozen times in the first half hour of this movie and the laughs did not slow down from there. I can't even pinpoint a funniest joke in this because nearly all of them had perfect comedic timing and great delivery from the voice actors. As much as I love the comedy from the show, I was a little worried it would get stale when watching it for 100 minutes straight. But no, the jokes were put into the right places at the right times and the movie never loses focus of its narrative, which is also pretty good too. I'm glad this movie manages to contain the spirit of Bob's Burgers in both its comedy and writing while also not feeling like a dragged out episode. The plot isn't outlandish or absurd, nor does it have that much filler outside of one scene I'll talk about later. At first, it may seem like the kids trying to solve a murder mystery seems a little weird for something called the Bob's Burgers movie, but the show was never really a stranger to doing stuff that could be a little weird, but still mostly down to earth. I mean, the pilot episode of Bob's Burgers is literally about Bob getting accused of putting human flesh into the food he's selling. So a murder mystery plot isn't completely alien to the show, but it's also something that has enough material to work with in order to carry an entire film. I really enjoyed both the kids and adult sides of the story, not just because of the fantastic jokes, but because I just love these characters so much. All three of the kids have interesting conflicts that fit well into their personalities from the show, with Tina questioning whether she actually does love Timmy Turner, Gene wanting to start his own rock band, and Louise wanting to prove herself. These conflicts were all used as comedy in the show, so it was really smart to take them more seriously in the movie and give some development. Seeing these characters I've watched so much of grow as people really got me emotional during the ending. It wraps everything up so well to the point where if you told me that this was the Bob's Burgers series finale, I would be happy. And on top of that, it's just a really fun and engaging mystery story. I was never bored while watching thanks to the excellent comedy and the interesting directions this movie took during the second third. While they're not super high, this movie definitely amped up the stakes from the show to the point where this all feels movie worthy. And speaking of amping things up, the animation is also really great. It's so much smoother and has a lot more depth than the TV show, which is definitely essential when jumping to the big screen. Even the CGI they used in this one car chase scene towards the end was also really well done. But as much as I love this movie, I will admit it's not perfect because I have two little criticisms with it. First one is more of a me problem, but there were a couple plot elements that had me a little confused. I love the show, but I haven't seen every single episode, so it was a little weird and confusing for me when things from the extended Bob's Burgers lore came up. Like, I wasn't really sure what Mr. Fishowner's relationship to his brother was, or why his brother lives in a treehouse right outside Mr. Fishowner's house. But that's not necessarily a problem with the movie itself, because those were likely established in episodes I just didn't watch. So I guess my only big problem with this movie would be the villain. Spoilers ahead, but the entire movie we're led to believe that Mr. Fishowner's brother was the one who did the murder, but it turns out it was actually Mr. Fishowner's lawyer. And the kids thought it was Mr. Fishowner's brother because they overheard him saying he wanted to flee the country. But it turns out that Mr. Fishowner and his brother are both innocent, yet they're still going to flee the country. And then when the lawyer guy is revealed to be evil, his evil plan is to sink the fish owners in a submarine and blow up the amusement park to make room for a mall or something like that. I don't know, this plot point wasn't built up to all that well, and it was kind of off-putting when they revealed it. And the lawyer also reveals his plan in this 10-minute long dialogue/song sequence. It's admittedly a little too long, but the scene is still really funny, and the song is really catchy. This isn't a Wow Now movie we're talking about after all. Oh yeah, and this movie also has a couple musical numbers, and they're pretty good. The soundtrack doesn't leave that much of an impact as there are only like 3 songs in the entire movie, and none of them are particularly amazing, but they're really charming and funny. So I think it's pretty clear at this point that I adored the Bob's Burgers movie. As a fan of the show, this was everything I could have wanted and more. It feels like a love letter to the series and the characters within it. It's charming, it's hilarious, it's well written, it's just an all-around fun time. I'd even recommend this to people who don't watch the show, as it's worth seeing just for the fun characters and the humor. Words can't describe how pleased I am that this movie turned out this amazing, and it's likely going to be my favorite animated film of the year since it doesn't really have that much competition. Go check it out and have yourselves a fun time. I'm going to give the Bob's Burgers movie a 9.5 out of 10. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to like the video if you enjoyed, comment down below, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next time.